Welcome to the program, Carol Roth. I'm hoping you can make sense and maybe some good news out of what happened yesterday, because I can't find a way to it because of the history of cutting the interest rate this much. My first thought was, this is election interference by the Fed. Then my second thought was, when did they last do this? And it didn't lead, neither of those lead to good things. So what's really going on here, Carol?
Well, first of all, Glenn, I just want you to know that I am unburdened by what has been, and now the market is in terms of interest rates, because we are in a rate cutting environment. And I think the important thing to remember is that when we talk about rate hikes, rate cuts, anything the Fed's doing, we have to keep it in context. And the backdrop is that we came out of 15 years of what's called ZIRP, zero interest rate policy.
Right. Where
the interest rates were at or near zero, unprecedented, as well as the Fed putting $9 trillion plus on its balance sheet. So this is an unprecedented, does not have an analog that we can directly compare to. Not to say that it's not important to go back and look at what's happened historically, but it doesn't mean exactly the same thing. And cutting 50 basis points or 0.5% today is different than when we're cutting it when interest rates are at 2%. So I just wanted to put that out. I also am somebody who, as you know, I've said on this program many times that I think the Fed's been way behind the curve. I think that they went up too high and that they were too slow to cut to begin with. So we'll put that from a backdrop standpoint. So how does the market interpret, and how should individuals interpret a cut? Well, there's the potentially the bad and potentially the good. So we'll walk through both of those real quickly.
Eden Pure is having their famous buy one, get one deal on the thunderstorm air purifiers. No matter how many thunderstorms you buy, you'll get an equal amount for free. There's nothing worse than having odors in your house. Have you ever walked into somebody's house and you're like, oh, wow, you either have a cat or a teenager? Thankfully, you can get rid of any bad smell now when you get the Eden Pure Thunderstorm Air Purifier. Whether it's odor from cooking, cigarettes, litter box, trash cans, or teenagers, it doesn't matter. Thunderstorm will knock it out. It starts working in seconds to clear a room of smells, and you don't ever have to replace a filter. And it doesn't cover the odors. It actually purifies the air. They've sold hundreds of thousands of Thunderstorm units so far, and they have thousands of 5-star reviews online. I want you to go right now to EdenPureDeals.com and use the discount code BECKBOGO.
So the potential bad is the signal. When you are saying that the economy is doing amazing and it's just, it's ripping along, and then to do a very large cut, they could have done half of that. They could have done 25 basis points, but to come out after not doing anything and say, we got to move 50 points can send a signal to say things are not going so well.
Right.
If you looked at the market yesterday, they were not taking the news so great, but
it went up, and then when he cut it, it went way down.
And then they gave up back all the gains yesterday. Right. But today they've had a day to digest it, and the market thinks that this is a good thing. Now, the market's not the economy. So,
yes.
But again, after 15 years of zero interest rate policy, it does make sense for us to get back to what's considered a neutral rate.
Is this a inflationary move, though?
So that's the question. So if you think about what the neutral rate is, which is theoretical, we don't know the number, but basically it's the dividing line between policy that is restrictive and policy that is accommodative. Right. And what we're trying to do is have the Fed have no influence in either direction. I believe that we are still in that restrictive area. So bringing it down from, to 4 3/4 to 5%, again, is not the same as bringing it down to 2%. And so I don't think that will cause inflation. We have to remember, too, again, going back to where I started, companies and individuals had 15 years to take out debt at basically no cost. This is sitting on companies' balance sheets. They took every piece that they could. And consumers right now don't have a lot of runway. So the idea of, a rate cut unleashing massive demand when we've gone to 4 3/4 to 5%, I don't see this as something that's going to unleash massive demand.
So here's I just love your opinion on this. As a businessman, I know I wouldn't be spending a dime right now on hiring, building, anything, not a dime, until I see what happens at the election. And depending on the election, if we go with Harris and we become much more restrictive and harder and more global and everything else, then I'm just battening down the hatches. If Trump gets in, I'd be willing to invest because, all right, good. We've got somebody who understands business. We can hire some more people, et cetera, et cetera. I don't see anybody making those moves rationally, no matter what the interest rate is at this point. Do you?
I think that's a logical way to digest it. I think that in terms of one of your first statements is this political? The Biden-Harris administration are going to be pushing out and saying, look, we've got inflation under control. The Fed said so. Otherwise, they wouldn't have lowered it by so much. So I think that is the push that they're going out and trying to convince people. Now, they've been trying to convince people of things that make absolutely no sense for the last 3.5 years. So, if I'm a business person, do I go ahead and make the investments? Probably not, but are there some people who might? It's a push. But I do think, the challenge is it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that if you get worried that there is a recession and you create these restrictive behaviors, that becomes self-fulfilling.
Right.
And that's one of the things that we end up worrying about.
All right. So let me just ask you one more thing. He mentioned the problem with unemployment. Unemployment's going on because you just added 7 to 20 million people to, the country. People are saying anecdotally that, and we are, I guess, seeing it in numbers that the jobs that are being filled with illegals and not American citizens. How long can that go on before it's just, an absolute wreck?
So the way that I've interpreted the economy is I see it as K-shaped. If you think about the letter K, you have, that one part of the K that goes up and the other part that goes down. And you have the people who are at the lower end of the K who have been struggling, and the people who are at that higher part of the K, the asset holders, the people with the white collar jobs and the homes who have been doing well. And you have to remember that what we've been seeing is it really is that higher part of the K that has been pulling the economy along. So not only do we have those illegals who are coming in and creating drains on everything, right? They're creating drains on employment, on the national debt, on housing, on everything. But we're also starting to see these cracks in the white collar labor market. When you hear Amazon saying, oh, we want everybody back in the office, it means that companies now have the power to demand that when they didn't have the power. And buried in that statement was, oh, we're trying to get rid of some managers. We've seen more and more layoffs on the tech side. So if we see that crack from the white collar piece, I think, at least in the short term, that's going to have the biggest impact on shifting what's going to happen here. And I think that's what the Fed is signaling they're trying to get ahead of. Whether or not they can do that remains to be seen, because usually they're always late. But it's true. We have a drag on both sides. We have that drag that's happening on the white collar piece. And then we have this massive illegal immigration that's putting strains on the system. And, that is going to, completely shift things. And I will say, Glenn, we hear all of these people talking about, technology and AI and how it's going to replace jobs. If you think that it's going to replace jobs, the jobs that they're going to replace are unskilled workers, right? The person who's making your burrito at Chipotle and the like. You could possibly make an argument that we do not need any more legal immigration in this country, with the exception of some very high merit-based people at all. In addition to this, travesty that's happening with the illegal immigration. So this is going to be, hopefully we can get President Trump in there. But this needs to be attacked in a serious fashion, because it's going to have massive implications for the economy, on top of the biggest issue, and it feeds right into it, which is the debt and the deficit spending that continues to grow that debt, the fact that that's unwieldy. So all of these things are puzzle pieces, but we can't let the noise about a Fed rate cut or what's happening distract us from that big issue. We need to grow the economy, and we need to reduce spending so we can get debt to GDP back to a normalized level and be able to save our country.
Carol, thank you. Appreciate it. Carol Roth,
pleasure.
the author of You Will Own Nothing, former investment banker and contributor to Blaze and also to this program. I just love her. She explains things the way, people like me talk, or just regular people. Carol, thank you so much. It's carolroth.com/news, carolroth.com/news.